Hold on to your butts. These are the Squashbuckler Diaries. Welcome back. My name is Guy Hasson, and you are listening to the Squashbuckler Diaries podcast, the only epic fantasy podcast about a girl who lives in her father's dreams. It's a daily podcast for life, from birth to death. And let's just join right in. We are at episode 74. If you haven't listened to the other episodes, you have a whole life to catch up on. It's like 5-minute episodes, and it's all slices of life, what it's like to grow up in the dream. From season 1 to season 2 to season 3 to season 4, she will slowly grow up, and we will see her turn and become a heroine. For now, she's just a kid. And a very young kid at that. And we see basically everything here is an Easter egg. And I think for once, this podcast is called the Squashbuckler Diaries and not the Swashbuckler Diaries, which is the correct word. And there's a reason for that. And today we're going to talk about it. So let's begin. Episode 74, the Squashbuckling Demo. Dragon Father and Dragon Little won the fight with the aliens. All the aliens had escaped, defeated by Dragon Father and Dragon Little piloting a tiny spaceship the size of 3 grown-up people. As soon as the aliens departed, Dragon Father landed the spaceship in an empty parking lot. Smoke was coming out of all sides of the ship where it had been hit. The door opened upwards and Dragon Father and Dragon Little climbed out. He raised his eyes and saw that they were near a store of some kind. "Aha," he said. "This is it. This is my chance." "Huh? Stay here. Don't move. Don't get into any trouble. I'll be right back." He ran into the store. Dragon Little waited, although it was clear that she had a hard time not following him. Within minutes, he returned with a small nylon bag. "What's that place?" "It's a store." "What's a store?" "Never mind, look at this." He pulled out a yellowish object the size of his palm. "I've never seen anything like it. I did not know what it was." "This," he emphasized, "is a fruit." Or a vegetable, I'm not really sure. "It's a fruit or a vegetable, okay? You eat it." She nodded, her eyes crinkling, not following what he was trying to say. "Now look here." He leaned into the ship and put the fruit or vegetable on the seat. "See?" She nodded. "Now I'm buckling it in. There, see?" She nodded. "Now, this is a squash." He pointed at the fruit or vegetable. "And this is buckling. This is squashbuckling." His voice rose as he no doubt remembered all the previous arguments on the subject. "This is not what we do. What we do is swashbuckling. We don't buckle in squashes. We fight with guns and swords. We swashbuckle." "I like squashbuckling." She looked at him, feigning a very innocent face. "I squashbuckle all the time." "No, you swashbuckle. Swash. Squash. Squash, squash, squash." "For God's sakes, listen to reason," he screamed. "Squash, squash, 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 squash." She skipped and hopped and climbed aboard the ship carelessly. "Joy!" This continued for a while, but he did not convince her. Told by the Red Dragon. Hashtags Joy, Justin, the meaning of squashbuckling. Now, if you go to the website, guyhasson.com, GYHASSON, you can actually look the hashtags. The hashtag, the meaning of squashbuckling, covers all the time they have arguments on the word squashbuckling. She refuses to say that she swashbuckles. She's a squashbuckler, which is why this is the Squashbuckler Diaries. And you can also go back and find the first time she ever said, by accident, squashbuckling. Now I can tell you further. I can tell you more than that. The origin of the word squashbuckling comes, of course, well, for me. And one time I was writing the book before the diaries. and I was like writing, and by accident I was tired. Instead of writing swashbuckler, I typed squashbuckling, and that made me laugh. I posted on Facebook, like a typo I made, squashbuckling instead of swashbuckling, and someone sent in a picture of a squash being buckled in. That's squashbuckling. And I loved it so much, and a few months later when I decided there wasn't enough about Joy's life in the book, it was basically the big dramatic events of her life, and that I wanted to cover more of it and so much more, I decided to call it the Squashbuckler Diaries, because, as it says in the book, she refuses to call it swashbuckling. She calls it squashbuckling. So you can see the origin of that. You can see how slowly, in the first time, he thought it was really funny. But the more it stayed, the more she refuses to give, the crazier it drives him. It drives him insane, and she is only age 4. So, hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Next time we learn more things about Joy and what makes her special on episode 75 called Swimming Alone. And now, the credits. The Squashbuckler Diaries are written and read by me, Guy Hasson. If you want to know more about the Squashbuckler Diaries, check out the website, guyhasson.com, which is GUYHASSON.com. The theme music is called Brash Gentleman and is by Thomas Herudek. I will talk to you again tomorrow in the dream. Ahoo! Okay, sorry about that. Squash, 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 squash.